Welcome in everybody to another Escape from Tarkov video. After 3,000 hours in the game, I wanted to share my top 5.5 tips for getting better at the game. So without further ado, let's make it happen. I'm sure a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about when I mention right hand peek, but I wanted to show you just how powerful a mechanic this is and why you should always be looking to right hand peek when you can. First, we have the right hand peek, and while this person has a perfect shot of my head, I can barely see a sliver of them. It makes it much harder for me to shoot them than for them to shoot me. Now, we look at the same situation with a left-hand peek. Now, with this left-hand peek, significantly more of the body is exposed, making it a lot easier for me to return fire if someone is peeking here. Therefore, as we all know and you've just seen, always look to right-hand peek when you can, but sometimes there will be some situations where you don't necessarily have to do it, leading us to tip 2. Tip number 2 is never re-peek the same angle, and also make sure to flank in fights. Even against a lowly scav, if you continue to re-peek the same angle, that scav is going to get a lock on you and is going to put you down. Having had it happen to me, I know that dying to a scav is never fun. But the same thing is true in PvP. If you continue to re-peek that same angle, eventually they're going to get a lock on your position and they're going to take you out. That's where the second part of flanking or just readjusting your positioning can make all of the difference in PvP. Rather than just stay in the exact same angle, if you do something as simple as move to the other side of the hallway while the enemy doesn't have sight on you, next time they peek, well, you're not going to be where they expect them to be, and it's going to give you that extra split second you need to win some of your engagements. Sometimes you're just in a situation where you're not going to win this fight head on. That's where you can use a flank. I like to use grenades to break the enemy's line of sight. Enemies typically will put a lot more value on your last known position than where you might be going. And if you take a quick flank and end up behind them, well, that's the easiest way to take someone out in Tarkov, just shoot them from behind. I've seen people will still be looking for trying to look at your last known position when you haven't been there for a while. But either way, always be adjusting your position to help you win more fights. Tip number 3 is the ammo matters more than the gun. Now, you can have the most amazingly modded out, 1 million ruble gun, but if you're shooting Nerf darts out of it, it doesn't matter how cool the gun is because all of the damage and penetration and fragmentation stats come from the bullet. And so in Tarkov, if you have a few extra rubles to spend on your kit, it is always worthwhile to spend it on getting better ammo versus getting a cooler gun, because this is what's going to really matter when you're tearing down your opponents. It's not just getting upper tier ammo that matters, but also using the ammo how it was designed to be used. Now, first up, we have RIP ammo versus PvP ammo, shooting someone in the chest with a hex grid. As we can see from this test, the PvP ammo does significantly better. However, before people yell at me about RIP ammo, let's look what it does against someone's leg. As we can see here, the RIP ammo does significantly better because it's a higher flesh damage round versus a higher penetration round. And so we've linked a sheet below to show you exactly what each round does damage and penetration wise. But it's important to note that you should be spending money on higher tier ammo and making sure you're using the ammo the way it was designed to be used. Tip number 4 is point fire is your best friend in close quarters combat. Now, a lot of shooters use a system where there is a random chance for a bullet to go in a predetermined area when you're hip firing. Tarkov doesn't do that. It has a point firing system where your bullet is going to go exactly where your weapon is aimed. And this is incredibly powerful because if you practice and get good at this, you are going to destroy people close range for a couple of reasons. First, in that extra time it takes you to ADS, you could already be firing, but in certain close quarters combats, when you're ADSing, it can be a little bit harder to be aiming at your opponent, depending on what scope you're using. And while this isn't Warzone, someone with wiggles or movement can dodge a little bit easier if you're aiming down the sight. But if you were using point fire, well, your bullets are not only going exactly where you want them to be, it makes it a lot easier to take people down close range. Now, this, in my opinion, is one of the biggest skills when I'm asking what's the difference between a good and a great Tarkov player. I think one of the biggest prerequisites is you are good at point fire. Now, how I personally would practice this, use the laser because it is going to guide exactly where your bullet's going to go. And I would load up into a factory offline raid, put your scavs to horde mode, and just have at it. Don't ADS, only use the point fire system. Get comfortable with that. Feel free to do that on online raids, factory, obviously a great place for close quarters combat. If you can master this skill, it is going to go a long way to helping you improve in Tarkov. The golden rule of Tarkov. And the golden rule of Tarkov is there is always one other person. If you've taken out an enemy PMC, his teammate's somewhere around. If you've taken out two, a third is surely nearby, so on and so forth. And that's to say, always be aware that there could be another person in the area before you rush to loot, whether it's someone you just took out or a high-tier loot area. Always be careful. Taking the time to be patient, checking your surroundings, and checking the immediate area to make sure that someone isn't scoped in on their dead friend in order to take you out when you go to loot them can save you a lot of heartache and a lot of loot loss. Now, the half tip that I want to give is just for new players or anyone really who's getting into the game. It's play the way you want to play. You know, there's a lot of opinions on there on how you should play Tarkov. But at the end of the day, Tarkov is just a game, and the way you should play Tarkov is the way that is fun for you. If what's fun for you is to load up with a hex grid, Alton, meta weapon, and go out in PvP, if you want to rat around the maps and just collect gear or do quests, if you want to hide in a bush or in a corner, have fun doing what you want. At the end of the day, Tarkov is a game. Games are meant to be fun, so play the way you want to play in Tarkov, and don't let anyone influence that decision. With that, thank you everyone for joining us today for another video. I hope to see you live on Twitch or on our next video. Have a good one.